And talk about a very triumphant moment. Let's get to it. The closing of SmackDown. One of, I would say, like one of the best that we have seen in a while here, because this one, everybody did their parts. And I think we finally got the version of this bloodline that we have been wanting to see. Because as you know, Robin, and everybody here who listens to the show, one of my biggest complaints has been that they keep saying that the bloodline, Solo Sikoa's bloodline, are crazy, that they're madmen, that they're awful, that they're these horrible people, right? That they're terrifying, they're menaces, and they're going to do bad things. Yet we really hadn't seen them be all that bad just yet. Like we had seen worse from other people or whatever, right? And in this case, it ended up being totally different because we had this what were they calling it? They were billing it as the Bloodline Acknowledgement Ceremony set for Madison Square Garden. That's how they were billing this on WWE.com. And I at first took this as, oh, they're going to acknowledge Jacob Fatu into the Bloodline. That's what I thought this was going to be, and it kind of sensed it like it was. But then it ended up being where all of the guys are telling Solo Sikoa that they love him and they acknowledge him. So then this ended up being primarily about acknowledging Solo Sikoa. And then the moment came where he takes out the red, the tribal chief necklace that Roman Reigns usually wears, and he hands it to Paul Heyman. Now, here is where I want to shout out Paul Heyman. I don't know how this was done. I don't know what he did to prepare for this. I'm starting to think dude did not sleep, because not only was he super, super pale white, abnormally white, he was also bloodshot eyes red. Like he looked like Justin Timberlake's mugshot. And I wanted to put them side by side, but I ran out of time. But so he literally looks terrified, right? And Solo Sikoa is telling him, like, you need to acknowledge me. And you felt it in the moment that he wasn't going to acknowledge him. And instead, he says, I acknowledge that you will never be my tribal chief, sticking with Roman Reigns. And so, of course, Solo Sikoa and the rest of the bloodline do not like this. And they freaking not only have Jacob Fatu do a splash on him inside the ring, they then drag his body out and freaking powerbomb him in through the table. I mean, this was crazy. This was so crazy, Robin. I don't know, begin wherever you want.
Like we go through weeks and weeks here where we're talking about, oh, it's not really doing it for us. And I think I called them bootleg bloodline. But I also made the point that you can't always have the gas pedal pushed all the way down. Like you have to pace yourself. And all of it came together in the last couple of weeks, right? Because it only takes a moment. And I think the presence of Fatu elevates Solo because it now makes the whole group more powerful. And then therefore Solo doesn't look like he's equal with the Tongas. And that elevates him. You also have been building this tension with Paul Heyman and Solo for weeks and weeks and weeks. And Heyman has done an awesome job selling that. What was the PLE where he was left in the ring, where he was wondering what was going on? Like you could see, I think you and I did Busted Open that morning. Right before it was a Backlash.
Was it Backlash?
Yeah, I think it was Backlash.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you saw Paul Heyman like, what am I getting? Like all of that was building toward this, and then the whatever you call the neckwear, that color, it just like it evoked all the sensory overload in my mind. I'm like, is it gonna hit? Is the music gonna hit? Is Roman's music gonna hit?
I thought he was gonna say, I acknowledge Roman Reigns. That's what I thought for a second.
And I was like tense. And I was anticipating that, but the way it ended worked out great. Not only because I popped off the couch, like for real, like, yeah, when he didn't acknowledge Solo Sikoa. And it allows the bloodline to look even stronger. Paul Heyman does a great job. And the greatest story in the history of wrestling. Bloodline's the greatest story in the history of wrestling. And I'm not so far off from calling Roman Reigns the GOAT. Like, I cannot wait for this man to return. I cannot wait to throw my ones in the air. I cannot wait to hear that dramatic ass music when it first hits before it comes in with the banger ass theme. Like it was beautiful, Denise. It was beautiful the way they did it. The energy was there, and it really just set the cycle in motion towards SummerSlam.
And the way that Paul Heyman sold all of that, man, from the reactions to just like even when he took the splash, he had this. If you go back and you watch it, go and please look specifically at Paul's face when he takes the splash, because there's a moment where it literally looks like his guts are about to come out of him. Like that was his reaction to that. Now, I do want to go to this. I want to go back to the super chat from Sam Pai Boone, because he had asked, will Roman Reigns come back at Money in the Bank next weekend? As much as I want to see Roman Reigns come back, right? Everybody wants to see Roman Reigns come back. I almost want to continue seeing what more chaos can the Bloodline instill right now, because now that they have Jacob Fatu, you have the power, you have the advantage to really start to build them up as the faction that they had been claiming that they were all along. So I almost want to hold off just a little bit longer, so when Roman Reigns comes back, it's like, oh shit, like this is now we're maximizing whatever reaction you can possibly get. So I do think that they can let this breathe just a little bit more until Roman comes back. So are you expecting him Money in the Bank closer to SummerSlam?
I don't think Money in the Bank makes sense because there's no motivation for him. Like, why is he coming to help Cody and Randy and KO? That doesn't make sense, right? Like, I mean, obviously, he and Cody had a thing. He and KO had a thing. There's no motivation for it would have made sense for him to come out and say Paul Heyman. Now, that's not to say that's what should have happened. It worked great the way it did. But something like that, right? Like that, I think it needs to be the triumphant moment where you're really waiting for Roman to come and play the hero now. Because I think that's where we're headed with Roman, is babyface Roman Reigns. But no, I don't think it happens at Money in the Bank because of the structure of that match. I think it happens sometime between then and SummerSlam, if not at SummerSlam.
So at Money in the Bank, we are going to have the 6-man tag. With I'm guessing I'm not even sure who's going to be the 3 guys in this match against Cody, Randy, and KO, because you have Solo, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Jacob Fatu. So it's going to be the 3 of them. I'm not sure which 3 exactly. They haven't necessarily specified here. So it does, like you mentioned, Roman Reigns doesn't necessarily have a specific reason at that moment. Of course, he's going to want to get revenge for what they did to his Wiseman, Paul Heyman. But again, I don't think that it fits into Money in the Bank quite yet. And for that also reason that you mentioned. But I'm looking at this though, and I'm thinking, okay, so what do you do here at Money in the Bank? Do you have the baby faces go over, or do you have the heels go over in this scenario? Because I almost want the heels to go over.
I think they have to after this, right? Like I think they have, or else you're sort of squandering it unless they just brutalize them. Unless Tama Tonga takes the pin or whatever, and then Solo and Fatu brutalize them. But I think you go the other way. I think you have the Bloodline win the match fairly cleanly, in Bloodline fashion. Obviously, there'll be shenanigans involved, but in a way where somebody's in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3. And I think that's the best direction they can go right now. And Fatu has to be involved in that match, right? Like I
would be disappointed if he wasn't involved in this match.
Yeah, I think you could hold Solo out if you wanted. Solo could be like, I'm the boss, I'm orchestrating things, but Fatu has to be in the match because we're all waiting to see that. We've seen glimpses of it, obviously, in these segments, but in an elongated presentation in the ring.
Well, like even today, all the attacks that were done on Paul Heyman was primarily from Jacob Fatu. He was the muscle. He was the one implementing the pain. So it does feel like now he is the attraction of this Bloodline. And it's simple things too. I noticed that there's little things that he did differently aside from just the big moves and all of that, right? But even just when they were having them talk to the camera and you had Solo there saying everything that he was saying, and then you had, both Tongas on the side, and then on the back, the whole time, Jacob Fatu was walking back and forth, and he was like making the faces, right? Like he seemed like he was already ready to unleash. So at no point did his state ever go down. Like he was always at a 10 the whole entire time. And I like that. And it's little things like that I think just go over a little bit more with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, again, and then, the hold, the wait, and here's the introduction. Here he is. He's just, they've got it with him right now. And I'm not so sure he's not main event and pay-per-views. Like I said, or PLEs. in the near future. I mean, I think he has that sort of gravitas at the moment, and we'll see how long it lasts. You know, sometimes we've seen it before where guys come in, they're hyped at the beginning, and a year from then it's not the same. But right now he's got it, and I think his introduction juiced up the Bloodline storyline, and it activated all of the subtext that was already laid down, which Paul Heyman did a masterful job of, and really he had to be the one that paid it off, because it was like little moments on SmackDown week after week where Heyman was like, like week after week, and it was just that little bit that was all building towards this. So you have to give WWE credit, Triple H, and all. They do long-term storytelling, right? Like even when you're disappointed in the moment, but not every episode of a show is the best episode of the show, or else like you would never talk about the best episode of the show.
Yeah. Well, here's my question to you now. Paul Heyman's going to be out for a while. When does he return? Does he just when he returns, does he return with Roman Reigns?
Well, it looked like he needed to sleep for about 3 weeks. So
yeah, he did. That's what I'm telling you. Like, he grew he also grew the facial hair. Like, it wasn't just the bloodshot eyes. He had the facial hair that was all scraggly, but he just looked like unhealthy. He looked unhealthy. I'm like, you need to eat some vegetables. You need to drink some water. You need something, because he looked so freaking stressed out. I'm going to pull up the picture in just a second. All right, let's vote. I'm going to be looking at the chat. All right, guys, who looked worse? Paul Heyman or Justin Timberlake?
Justin Timberlake just looks like he has no soul. It looks like the soul has left his body. Paul Heyman looks like he's on the verge of death, and I hope he's actually okay.
Oh man, I can't. I'm sorry, it's killing me right now.
We are not bringing sexy back with those shots. Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh my God, Paul looks worse. That's what I'm saying. Give the man kudos. How did he do it? How did he look worse? Look, everybody's bringing it up. How did this happen? What did he do to make himself look worse? I hope you enjoyed this clip from my podcast, Speak Now Pro Wrestling. If you want to watch the entire thing, you can by clicking on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for plenty more pro wrestling content.